The more you explain yourself to people who trigger your anxiety, the more power you give them over your inner peace. At first, it seems harmless. You are only trying to be clear. You want to avoid conflict, soften the conversation, make sure no one thinks you are selfish, rude, dramatic, cold, ungrateful, or difficult. So you add another sentence, then another. You explain your decision, your feeling, your boundary, your silence, your tone, your need for space. And somewhere in the middle of trying to be understood, you lose contact with the simple truth that was already alive in your body. This is where the problem begins. The anxiety is not only in the conversation, it is in the way your soul leaves itself when another person does not immediately approve of what you feel. I want you to notice the moment. You say something honest, and instead of feeling relief, your body tightens. The throat becomes alert, the chest waits for danger. The mind begins arranging words like furniture in a room where someone important may enter and judge everything. You are no longer simply speaking, you are preparing a defense. A boundary becomes a speech, a no becomes a long explanation, a feeling becomes a case you must prove. Your truth is brought before an invisible court, and the other person is given the position of judge. This is not clarity. This is anxiety trying to earn safety. Before we go deeper, if this message touches something in you, subscribe to this channel. Here, we explore the feminine psyche, anxiety, the shadow, and the journey back to yourself. Now, let us sit with the real wound beneath this pattern. No woman is born believing that her feelings need permission. A child cries because something hurts. She reaches because she needs comfort. She becomes angry because a boundary has been crossed. In the beginning, emotion is direct. It does not yet know how to apologize for existing. Then life begins to teach her whether her inner world is welcome. When sadness is dismissed, the child learns to doubt it. When fear is mocked, she learns to hide it. When anger is punished, she dresses it as politeness. When her needs irritate the people she depends on, she becomes careful. She studies faces. She senses changes in tone. She discovers that love can feel safer when she makes herself easier to understand, easier to manage, easier to approve of. This is how the explaining begins. Not as manipulation, not as weakness, as adaptation. The psyche is intelligent. It learns the language that keeps connection available. If truth creates distance, truth becomes softer. If directness brings punishment, directness becomes hidden. If someone withdraws love whenever she displeases them, the child begins to confuse approval with safety. Later, as an adult, she may call this emotional responsibility. She may say she is only being considerate, and sometimes she is. There is dignity in explaining when explanation serves love. There is maturity in clarifying a misunderstanding, repairing harm, and helping another person understand your heart. But there is another kind of explanation that does not come from love. It comes from fear. You can feel the difference in the body. A true explanation has steadiness in it. It may be uncomfortable, but it does not make you disappear. An anxious explanation multiplies itself. It keeps asking for one more sentence because the previous one did not bring peace. It searches for the perfect wording, not because truth needs refinement, but because the nervous system believes the wrong wording could cost you belonging. This is the hidden anxiety behind over-explaining. It is the fear that if someone misunderstands you, your reality becomes invalid. It is the fear that if someone is displeased, you have done something wrong. It is the fear that a simple boundary will make you unlovable unless you wrap it in enough softness. A woman may spend years living this way without seeing the cost. She becomes skilled at translation. She translates anger into logic, discomfort into politeness, refusal into gentle paragraphs, pain into explanations so reasonable that no one has to feel disturbed by it. Others may praise her for being mature, but the body knows when maturity has become a mask. The body remembers the truths that were edited. It remembers the yes that carried a no inside it. It remembers the apology that was offered only to prevent distance. It remembers the long message written after the first sentence had already been enough. It remembers the smile that covered resentment and the calm tone that hid a trembling soul. This is why anxiety often grows around people who make you explain yourself too much. The issue is not merely that they ask questions. A sincere question can open intimacy. A respectful conversation can deepen trust. But when someone repeatedly makes you feel that your experience is unacceptable until they approve of it, the relationship begins to recreate an old wound. You may find yourself shrinking before you even speak. The mind becomes careful. The body becomes alert. Your words lose their natural rhythm because you are no longer speaking from the center. You are speaking from the fear of consequence. Perhaps their silence reminds you of emotional punishment. Perhaps their criticism carries the tone of someone who once made you feel small. Perhaps their confusion is not innocent, but a way of keeping you defending yourself until you no longer remember the original truth. In my work with the psyche, I would call this a loss of inner authority. Inner authority is not arrogance. It does not refuse dialogue. It does not say, "I am always right." Rather, it allows a woman to remain connected to what she knows, even when someone else cannot understand it. Without this authority, the reaction of another person becomes stronger than the quiet knowledge of the soul. Someone questions your boundary, and suddenly the boundary begins to tremble. A disappointed face appears, and your certainty starts to dissolve. An accusation of being dramatic makes you forget what your own body already told you. This is how self-abandonment often happens. Not through one great event, but through small moments of surrender that appear harmless. You soften the truth to keep peace. You laugh when nothing is funny. You explain the same wound again to someone who has already shown little care for it. You apologize for needing what any soul would need. Each moment seems small, yet over time the psyche learns a dangerous lesson. My reality is negotiable. The soul cannot remain peaceful under that lesson. It begins to protest. Sometimes the protest appears as resentment. At other times it arrives as exhaustion, tightness in the throat, anxiety before sending a message, or an inability to rest after a conversation. You may think you are disturbed because the other person did not understand. More deeply, you may be disturbed because you betrayed the part of you that had already spoken clearly. The persona is often involved here. A woman may build a face for the world, calm, generous, reasonable, easy to love, always willing to explain, always ready to understand the other side. There is nothing wrong with kindness. The danger begins when kindness becomes a costume worn over fear. The persona says, "I am fine." The body knows she is not. The persona says, "I do not mind explaining." The soul feels tired from being translated again and again. What cannot live in the persona moves into the shadow. Anger goes there when it has no safe place in the room. Refusal goes there when saying no once cost love. Desire, clarity, ambition, directness, disappointment, even the simple wish to be left in peace can be pushed into the hidden parts of the psyche. These exiled parts do not vanish. They return through symptoms, through sudden emotional reactions, through dreams, through tension, through the strange fatigue that comes after you have been too acceptable for too long. The shadow is not your enemy. It is the life you were not allowed to live openly. When the urge to overexplain becomes intense, one of these hidden parts may be asking to return. Perhaps the anger that you turned into politeness is asking to become a boundary. Perhaps the sadness you made reasonable wants to be honored without being proven. Perhaps the direct voice you buried is trying to speak without a costume. This is why stopping the explanation can feel frightening. You are not only changing a habit, you are interrupting an old survival contract. That contract says, "I will be understandable so I will not be abandoned. I will be gentle so no one becomes angry. I will make my truth small enough to be accepted. I will keep talking until the other person gives me permission to trust myself." Individuation asks something different. It asks you to become whole enough to remain loyal to your soul, even when approval is not guaranteed. This is not easy for the feminine psyche that has been trained to preserve connection at any cost. Many women learn early that belonging is maintained through emotional labor. They notice moods, prevent conflicts, soothe tension, explain intentions, soften truths, and absorb discomfort that does not belong to them. By adulthood, the nervous system may treat someone else's displeasure as a crisis. So when you stop explaining, the first sensation may not be peace. It may be alarm. The body may urge you to go back, clarify, send another paragraph, fix the tone, make sure they are not upset. You may feel guilty for leaving a simple sentence alone. The silence after a boundary may seem unbearable because, in the past, Silence may have meant danger. Do not mistake that discomfort for a sign that you are doing something wrong. A nervous system can resist freedom when captivity has become familiar. If you have spent years surviving through explanation, then standing quietly inside your own truth will feel strange at first. The old part of you may whisper that you are being harsh, careless, selfish, unkind. It may tell you that a good woman makes everyone understand. Yet a deeper voice will know that a truth defended beyond its natural measure begins to lose its dignity. If this reflection is helping you see your anxiety in a deeper way, like this video now. Let it be a quiet recognition that you are ready to stop explaining your soul to people who profit from your self-doubt. There is something important I want to say about people who trigger this pattern in you. Not everyone who misunderstands you is manipulating you. Human beings are imperfect. We miss each other. We hear through our own wounds. Sometimes clarification is necessary and even beautiful. A healthy relationship can hold the discomfort of a difficult conversation without turning your truth into a crime. But you must learn to recognize when clarification becomes a maze. There are people who do not ask in order to understand. They ask in order to exhaust. The question is repeated, then your tone is questioned, then your memory, your intention, your timing, your character. Slowly, the conversation moves away from what happened and becomes a trial about whether you have the right to feel what you feel. When this happens repeatedly, you are no longer in dialogue. You are inside a psychological negotiation where your self-trust is being drained. A person who wants to meet you may need time, but they will not require you to bleed for every sentence. The wrong dynamic feels different. You enter hoping to be seen and leave doubting your own eyes. You begin with a clear boundary and end up defending your personality. You speak about a wound and somehow become responsible for comforting the person who caused it. Afterward, your mind keeps replaying the conversation because something in you knows that the exchange did not bring truth. It took truth away. Pay attention to that. The body often notices the cost before the ego allows itself to name it. When a conversation repeatedly separates you from your own center, the soul is giving you information. Perhaps more words are not needed. Perhaps the next step is not another explanation, but a return to yourself. This is where silence becomes powerful. Not silence as punishment, not silence as fear, not the cold withdrawal of someone who wants control. I am speaking of the silence that comes after you have already been honest. The silence that protects the sacred from becoming a spectacle. The silence that refuses to place your inner life on display for someone committed to misunderstanding it. Such silence has dignity. It does not shout, and yet it changes the atmosphere. A woman who once explained everything begins to stand differently when she no longer offers endless access to her inner process. People feel it. Some respond with respect because they can sense that her words now come from a center. Others become uncomfortable because the old version of her was easier to influence. This discomfort reveals the structure of the relationship. If a connection was built on your compliance, your clarity will disturb it. If someone relied on your guilt, your silence will feel like rebellion. If they were used to receiving emotional labor from you on demand, your boundary may be interpreted as coldness. This does not mean you are doing something wrong. It may mean the relationship is meeting the woman you are becoming and does not know what to do with her. Growth often exposes what was hidden. A person who truly loves your essence may need time to adapt, but they will not demand that you return to self-abandonment so they can feel comfortable. Someone attached to your old role may call your healing selfish. They may say you have changed, and in a way they are right. You are no longer available for the same unconscious contract. That can hurt. Let it hurt without turning pain into another performance. Grief may appear when you stop over-explaining because the habit was once connected to belonging. Even harmful roles can feel like home when they are familiar. A woman may know that the old pattern exhausts her and still feel afraid to leave it. The psyche does not release survival strategies simply because the intellect has understood them. It needs new experience. It needs evidence that the adult woman can remain safe without the old performance. Here, gentleness matters. Do not attack the part of you that over-explains. That part was trying to protect you. It may be young. It may remember rooms where truth brought distance, anger, ridicule, or punishment. If you shame it, it will only become more frightened. Approach it as you would approach a child who has been carrying too much responsibility. Firmly, but with tenderness, you teach it that safety no longer has to be purchased with perfect words. The adult self must become present enough to say, "I understand why you want to explain again. I understand why silence feels dangerous, but we have already spoken with honesty. We do not need to leave ourselves to manage someone else's reaction." This inner speech is not a trick. It is a re-education of the psyche. Each time you allow a simple truth to remain simple, the body learns. Each time you pause before adding unnecessary defense, the nervous system receives a new message. Each time you let someone disagree without collapsing into guilt, inner authority becomes less theoretical and more embodied. The old anxiety may still rise, of course. It may tighten the throat and push the mind toward one more message. But now you can relate to anxiety differently. Instead of obeying immediately, you can listen. Instead of letting it write your next sentence, you can ask what it is trying to prevent. Perhaps it fears rejection. Perhaps it remembers anger. Perhaps it believes that being disliked means being unsafe. Perhaps the loneliness of being misunderstood feels too close to an old abandonment. When these fears become conscious, the compulsion loses some of its power. You begin to see that the explanation is not always about the present situation. Sometimes, it is an attempt to control the emotional outcome. And this is where surrender becomes necessary. You can speak with honesty. You can choose kindness where kindness is available. You can be precise and responsible. You can repair when your conscience knows repair is needed. But you cannot control what another person does with your truth once it leaves your mouth. Some people will receive it with maturity. Others will distort it, because distortion protects them from seeing themselves. Disappointment, defensiveness, distance, even unexpected respect may appear. Your task is not to predict all of this before you speak. Your task is to remain connected to yourself while you speak. This is the difference between the persona and the self. The persona wants to be received well. The self wants to remain whole. The persona adapts to secure belonging. The self seeks a deeper belonging, one that does not require the soul to abandon its own shape. For a long time, you may have called external calm peace, yet often it was only the quiet that came after you surrendered your truth. The room became easier, but your body did not. The other person relaxed, but something inside you stayed tense. That tension is not meaningless. It is the soul remembering what the persona tried to erase. A real peace includes you. If the peace requires your disappearance, it is not peace. It is control wearing a gentle face. This is why the woman who stops explaining herself begins to feel both fear and relief. Fear arises because the old strategy is being interrupted. Relief arrives because the soul recognizes integrity. The throat may still tremble, but the voice becomes cleaner. The mind may still doubt, but the body begins to sense that it has not been abandoned this time. This is how self-trust is built, not through affirmation alone, not through thinking about confidence. The soul watches what you do. It notices when you protect your truth. It notices when you keep promises to yourself. It notices when fear appears and you do not immediately hand your authority to someone else. Every unnecessary explanation teaches the psyche that your reality needs permission. Every honest sentence allowed to stand teaches the opposite. Now, before we move into the practice, think of one woman who needs to hear this. A woman who explains until she is exhausted because anxiety tells her that being fully understood is the only way to be safe. Send this video to her. Sometimes a woman does not need another method for pleasing people. She needs permission to stop translating her soul for those who refuse to listen. For the next 7 days, I want you to practice what I call the one-sentence boundary. When the old pressure to explain rises, do not begin by asking how to make the other person comfortable. First, ask what is true. Beneath the long defense, there is usually one clean sentence trying to emerge. The work is to find that sentence before fear covers it with decoration. It may be as simple as saying that you cannot go, that you need time, that the conversation does not feel respectful, that something does not work for you, that your decision remains the same, or that you are not available to discuss the matter in that moment. The exact words are less important than the inner posture. You are not trying to wound. You are trying not to disappear. Say the sentence with the kindness that is genuinely available to you, and then allow a little silence. This silence is the practice. You may feel the impulse to rush in and cover it. Let the impulse rise. Notice the body. Feel your feet against the ground, the weight of yourself in the chair, the breath moving through the chest. Let the present become physical enough to hold you. Then ask inwardly whether you can remain with yourself for 10 more seconds. Only 10. In those seconds, the younger part of you learns that another person's reaction is not the whole world. It learns that disapproval can be uncomfortable without being fatal. It learns that love does not require the endless defense of your existence. The adult woman becomes a home the anxious part can return to. If clarification is truly needed after that pause, offer it from your center. If it is not needed, let the silence remain. At first, you may not always know the difference. That is all right. Fear and truth may have been tangled together for years. The psyche learns through repetition, patience, and lived experience. At the end of each day, write down one moment when you explained less than you normally would. Do not turn this into another reason to judge yourself. Simply observe. What did your body feel? What story did the mind create? Did guilt appear? Did the other person actually respond as you feared? Or did the fear belong to an older time? This reflection begins to separate the present from the past. That separation is healing. Anxiety often collapses time. It makes the old room feel like the current room, the old authority feel like the person in front of you, the old abandonment feel like the silence that just appeared. Consciousness restores distance. It lets you see that this conversation is not every conversation. This person is not every person. This moment is not the entire history of your wound. From that place, choice becomes possible. You may still explain, but you will explain with dignity. You may still clarify, but not from panic. You may still apologize, but not for existing. You may still care what others feel, but you will not make their reaction the ruler of your soul. That is the beginning of freedom. Now write in the comments the city where you are watching from, and tell me if this message made sense to you. Have you been explaining yourself to people who trigger your anxiety? What is one sentence you need to practice saying without turning it into a long defense? If this reflection spoke to your soul, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Here, we continue exploring the feminine psyche, anxiety, the shadow, and the journey back to yourself. You do not need to explain your soul to everyone. Speak with honesty. Clarify when love truly asks for clarity. Repair when your conscience calls for repair. But do not build a life around defending your existence to people who are committed to misunderstanding it. There comes a moment when a woman must stop asking the world for permission to be real. At first, anxiety may still rise. The throat may still search for one more sentence. But beneath the fear, something begins to stand. The voice becomes cleaner. The body begins to recognize itself as home. The old theater loses its audience, and the woman who once explained herself into exhaustion discovers the quiet power of belonging to herself. I see you in my next video.